Today that actress Diane Keaton has died in California. She was 79 years old.
Diane Keaton, the symbol of style, intellect, and independence in American cinema, who once captivated the world through Annie Hall and The Godfather, passed away on October 11, 2025 at the age of 79. But just days after the quiet funeral in Los Angeles, word spread across Hollywood. Inside her red brick home in Brentwood, a hidden diary had been discovered in an old wooden drawer. Within those yellowed pages were not only memories of glory, but also a mysterious list marked in red people whom Diane Keaton once vowed never to meet again. Some were actors who turned their backs when she stood up for someone. Others were men who, after being rejected, tried to sabotage her career. One name even revealed a love story that lasted over 15 years, so bitter it made her swear to live the rest of her life alone. Who then were the names written in that notebook, and who was the one Diane Keaton truly resented before she passed away? 1. Woody Allen loyalty under fire. A friendship. Tested throughout her life, Diane Keaton placed her trust in only a few people. One of them was Woody Allen. In the late 1960s, when Keaton was still a young Broadway actress, Allen was already a famous playwright and comedian. They met during rehearsals for Play It Again Sam at the Broadhurst Theater in New York. Their bond grew through long nights of rehearsal and diner conversations on 8th Avenue, talking about scripts, life, and film. In the 1970s, Allen and Keaton became one of the rare creative duos of American cinema. Together they made Sleeper Love and Death Manhattan, and most notably Annie Hall, which earned Keaton an Oscar and elevated Allen to global acclaim. They hardly needed words. Even silence worked. Allen once told The New Yorker, "Diane is intelligent, contradictory, and sincere to a point that sometimes disarms me." But in the early 1990s, turbulence struck. Woody Allen's private life with longtime partner Mia Farrow exploded in the media, filling every TV channel from CNN to NBC. America divided. Friends distanced themselves. Yet Keaton-Allen's artistic soulmate did not walk away. She still called, still visited his apartment on the Upper East Side. The New York Times wrote, "When all of Hollywood turned away, only Diane Keaton stayed." In 2014, when Allen received the Golden Globe Lifetime Achievement Award, Keaton went on stage to speak for him. Her voice trembled. "Woody is my best friend, and I believe in him." The room fell silent, but hours later, social media erupted. Variety wrote that Keaton had stepped into one of modern Hollywood's most forbidden zones. In 2018, during the Knocker Me Too movement, Keaton tweeted, "Woody Allen is my friend. I still believe in him." The short post split public opinion. Director Jud Apatow criticized her on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, saying she was clinging to a past that's gone. The media swarmed. The Guardian, Vulture, and The Hollywood Reporter all questioned whether Diane Keaton was sacrificing her image for loyalty. Some called her brave, others called it a mistake. After that, Keaton largely withdrew from public life. She retreated to her red brick Brentwood home, occasionally appearing at her photo exhibits. Friends told Vanity Fair that she often re-watched Allen's old films, sometimes laughing, sometimes in tears. Among her final writings, one quiet line stood out. "I stood by him not because he was right, but because I saw him lonelier than ever." Her loyalty brought pain, yet also revealed her essence. She never abandoned those she once believed in. But that steadfastness also left her isolated in a new era where everything was judged under the spotlight of public scrutiny. Deuce, Al Pacino, A Love Without Commitment, Conflict Over Marriage. If there was ever a love story in Hollywood history that audiences would never forget, it was the one between Diane Keaton and Al Pacino. Quiet and free of scandal, yet spanning nearly 2 decades, just like the two private souls at its center. It all began in 1971 on the set of The Godfather in New York. Francis Ford Coppola was filming the wedding scene that opened the movie with hundreds of extras and a camera panning across the Italian-style feast. Keaton, a 25-year-old California girl with bright eyes and a natural way of speaking, had just been cast as Kay Adams, the gentle wife of the cold-blooded Michael Corleone. Pacino, then an unknown stage actor from the Bronx, carried a gaze so deep that Keaton noticed him instantly. In a 1978 Esquire interview, Diane said, "I looked at Al for the first time and thought, oh my God, he's unlike anyone I've ever met. He was mysterious, charming, yet distant. I guess that was the problem. Filming went late into the night." The cast often dined at Elaine's, a Manhattan hangout for artists. It was there that the two began small conversations, then late-night meetings. Journalist Maureen Orth of Vanity Fair wrote, "No one knew when they started dating. All they knew was that Pacino only spoke to Diane throughout the shoot." When The Godfather premiered in 1972 and became a worldwide phenomenon, fans adored the on-screen couple of Kay and Michael, while the press began speculating that the romance had spilled off-screen. People magazine in 1977 asked, "Are they reliving the Corleone love story in real life?" Both of them dodged the question, smiling politely in interviews. Their relationship stretched through the 1970s, full of breakups and reunions. Pacino, who despised commitment, often told friends he feared marriage like a burden. Keaton, in her 30s, and at the height of her career with Annie Hall, began to long for stability. A friend told Vanity Fair, "She once waited 2 nights for Al at Chateau Marmont just to hear him say he didn't believe in marriage." It wasn't the only time Keaton cried because of Pacino. In 1983, while Pacino immersed himself in Scarface, he disappeared from her life. Calls went unanswered. Letters remained unopened. While Keaton moved back to Los Angeles, Pacino stayed in New York. A mutual friend said Keaton realized she loved a man who was always acting even when the cameras weren't rolling. The final turning point came in 1990 at the Los Angeles premiere of The Godfather Part 3. Keaton arrived alone in a white Ralph Lauren gown. Pacino came with his new girlfriend, director Lyndall Hobbs, nearly 20 years younger. Amid the flashing cameras, photographer Ron Galella captured the moment they walked past each other without greeting. Entertainment Weekly later called it the coldest red carpet moment ever. Insiders revealed that months earlier, Keaton had sent Pacino an ultimatum: marry or end it. He stayed silent, and then disappeared. After the breakup, Pacino's life continued to fascinate tabloids. In 1992, he had a daughter, Julie Marie, with acting coach John Tarrant. In 2001, he fathered twins with actress Beverly D'Angelo. Between his intense roles in Heat, Donnie Brasco, and The Insider, the media dubbed him the last lonely soul of classic Hollywood. Keaton, meanwhile, chose quiet. She never married. In 1996, she adopted 2 children and focused on photography. In a 2005 conversation with Oprah Winfrey, Keaton smiled softly. "I loved Al for so long that I forgot who I was." The audience fell silent. It wasn't just about love, but about an era in Hollywood where artists loved with all their hearts yet could never stay together. Her relatives later revealed that among the papers on her desk was a handwritten line in brown ink: "He never belonged to me, and he never belonged to anyone." That single sentence reflected Al Pacino himself, a gifted, magnetic man destined to walk alone in his own world. 3. Jack Nicholson. From dislike to a clash of egos. In the glitzy world of 1980s, Hollywood, no one matched Jack Nicholson for charm and notoriety. He embodied rebellion, a kind of reckless magnetism tinged with danger, while Diane Keaton represented the opposite: elegant private, No parties, no scandals. Yet fate threw them together, and the encounter left such a mark that even hearing Jack's name could change her expression. Their first meeting took place at an Oscar after-party in 1978 in Beverly Hills. Nicholson arrived with longtime girlfriend Anjelica Huston. Producer Robert Evans recalled Jack approaching Diane with a half-smile, drink in hand. "You're beautiful, Diane. Care to dance?" Keaton glanced at Huston and replied, "I don't dance with men who already have company." The sharp response silenced the room for seconds. Journalist Peter Biskin later recorded the incident in Easy Rider's Raging Bulls as a moment in Hollywood more real than any movie. By then, Nicholson was the biggest star alive, after One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. 1975 and The Shining 1980, he lived like a legend, parties in the Hollywood Hills, a trail of romances with models, actresses, and even painters. Rolling Stone in 1989 wrote, "Jack doesn't have a home, only a port for pleasure." Vanity Fair called him the last playboy of the golden age. Keaton, on the other hand, avoided luxury gatherings. After Annie Hall and Reds, she spent time reading, photographing, and appearing only when necessary. People joked Jack is chaos, Diane is reason. Maybe that's why she never liked him much. But Hollywood loves irony. It paired opposites together. In 2003, director Nancy Meyers cast Jack Nicholson and Diane Keaton as a middle-aged couple in Something's Gotta Give. When the project was announced, the press called it Hollywood's most unexpected reunion. Filming took place in Malibu Colony, California. Keaton stayed in a simple white house by the sea, Nicholson next door in a Pacific-facing villa. Meyers told NBC's Today Show, "They seem opposite but work surprisingly well together." Yet, according to reporter Nancy Collins, Los Angeles Times production sometimes halted because Jack took his jokes too far. A lighting crew member recalled, "One day Jack said something that made Diane go silent. She walked out, wandered the beach for 3 hours, then returned only after Nancy personally apologized." The story leaked, fueling summer headlines. Diane Keaton leaves the set. Jack crosses the line again. Off-camera, Nicholson's behavior frustrated Keaton further. Since the early 1990s, his private life had been a whirlwind. Children with multiple women, including actresses Rebecca Broussard and Susan Anspach, and even a 1994 altercation in Hollywood Hills, involving a golf club that dominated tabloids for weeks. For Keaton, disciplined and composed, it was intolerable. Friends said she never understood why Hollywood idolized men who thrived on chaos like Jack. When Something's Gotta Give premiered in late 2003, the film became a box office hit. Keaton earned an Oscar nomination. Nicholson reclaimed his veteran star status. Though they appeared together at dozens of events, they rarely spoke privately. On The Graham Norton Show in 2014, when asked if she was ever attracted to Jack, Keaton smiled. "I admire his talent, but we see the world differently. I need peace. He only feels alive in disorder." The quote went viral for its gentle but cutting truth. Nicholson, however, often praised her publicly. On Access Hollywood, he said Diane has eyes that make men stop before they say something foolish. But for Keaton, that gaze was reserved for those who knew boundaries. A friend revealed that at a 2006 Los Feliz party, when someone mentioned Jack, she simply replied, "I acted with him once. Once was enough." To Diane, Nicholson wasn't an enemy, just the embodiment of a kind of man she could never stand, arrogant, charming, and forever adolescent. Their story ended quietly, yet it shaped how Keaton viewed powerful men in Hollywood, from those she loved to those she avoided, all fragments of a conflicted life. 4. Francis Ford Coppola, artistic differences and refusing a shared legacy. Among those who ever disappointed Diane Keaton, Francis Ford Coppola was perhaps the most unusual case, not because he hurt her heart, but because he struck directly at her deepest belief, her belief in art. Their story began in 1971. At that time, Coppola, 32, was hailed as a wonder director after the success of The Rain People and his screenplay for Patton. Paramount had tasked him with adapting The Godfather, a mafia novel the studio initially saw as mere entertainment. Meanwhile, Diane Keaton, just 25, had recently left Broadway after Play It Again Sam with Woody Allen, still a complete stranger to Hollywood. Producer Robert Evans, upon seeing Keaton's casting file, bluntly told Vanity Fair, "She doesn't look like anyone from the mafia world. She looks like an artist lost in the Bronx." But Coppola saw in Keaton what others couldn't, the fragile intellect he wanted for Kay Adams, the only woman who could love Michael Corleone and still keep her humanity. "It was precisely because she was different that I chose her," Coppola told the New York Times in 1972. The success of The Godfather in 1972 changed both of their lives. The film won 3 Oscars and became an American cultural icon. Diane Keaton rose to stardom, and Coppola cemented his name as one of the greatest directors in history. But behind the camera, cracks in their relationship began to appear. By The Godfather Part 2, 1974, Coppola had become obsessively perfectionist. He forced Keaton to redo certain scenes dozens of times. A crew member told The Village Voice Diane would often cry in the car, and Francis would yell into the walkie-talkie, "Do it again! She's not cold enough!" In a 1975 interview with New York Magazine, Keaton admitted, "I was afraid of Francis. He was too intense. Everything felt like life or death." After Part 2, Keaton told the press she didn't want to play Kay again. But nearly 20 years later, Coppola called her. It was 1989, and The Godfather Part 3 had just begun development. Paramount demanded a historic farewell while Coppola desperately needed the money to save his family's Zoetrope studio from bankruptcy after the financial disaster of One from the Heart, 1982. In a handwritten 4-page letter to Keaton, Coppola wrote, "No one else can close Kay Corleone's story but you." Moved by his sincerity, Diane agreed to return. However, what followed turned filming into a nightmare. The movie, shot in Rome and New York throughout 1990, was plagued with chaos. Actress Winona Ryder, initially cast as Mary, the daughter of Michael Corleone, dropped out at the last minute due to exhaustion, collapsing at the Savoy Hotel in Rome. In panic, Coppola decided to replace her with his 19-year-old daughter, Sofia Coppola. The decision shocked Hollywood. On December 11, 1990, Los Angeles Times headlined, "Coppola risks his family legacy." Some crew members recalled Keaton's concern. One said Diane told Francis to find someone else, but he wouldn't listen. She just stayed silent and focused on finishing her scenes. As Paramount pressured Coppola over the ballooning $55 million budget, Keaton watched tensions rise. The Teatro Massimo Palermo Sicily scene dragged on for 12 hours overnight, with the exhausted crew barely standing. Francis was like a general on the battlefield, Keaton later said. "I respected him, but I was also afraid of him." When The Godfather Part 3 premiered in December 1990 in Los Angeles, critics were divided. Some praised its ambition to close the saga. Others called it an artistic stumble. The Washington Post wrote, "Part 3 feels like a tired farewell." Entertainment Weekly called it something Coppola shouldn't have done yet couldn't avoid doing. In a 1992 interview, Diane Keaton said bluntly, "I think the film should have ended at Part 2. Part 3 felt like a love letter sent too late." The line spread across Hollywood in days. Coppola, upon hearing it, was furious. A source from Variety revealed Francis took it as betrayal. He called Al Pacino and said, "She doesn't understand how many times I saved her role from being cut." From that moment, Coppola and Keaton never spoke again. For years, they avoided each other. When the Godfather cast reunited at the Tribeca Film Festival in 2017, both appeared on stage but never made eye contact. Photographer Kevin Mazur captured Keaton standing still, forcing a faint smile as Coppola was honored. In her 2011 memoir, Then Again, Diane wrote only one line about him: "Francis saw me when no one else did. But every prophet must pay the price for their belief." That line was both gratitude and farewell. To Diane, Coppola was always a mentor, but also living proof that genius can sometimes lose its way in the shadow of its own legacy. For Coppola, the half-failure of Part 3 silenced him for nearly a decade. He spent his time tending vineyards in Napa Valley, away from film sets. In later interviews, he occasionally mentioned Diane, but never by name when referring to those who didn't understand me. Their silence lasted until the end of Diane's life, a void neither dared to cross. But Hollywood never lacks people eager to speak for others, even when they don't understand the pain. One of them was Alec Baldwin, who managed to both disappoint and frustrate Diane Keaton by trying to defend women without truly listening to them. 5. Warren Beatty, The Rejected Proposal, Divergent Dreams. By 1980, when Warren Beatty began making Reds an epic about revolution and human passion, he was already a legend. With a reputation as a perfect yet dangerous star, Beatty graced the cover of Time magazine in 1978 as the most captivating man alive, celebrated as an actor, producer, and director simultaneously nominated for multiple Oscars. For Reds, Beatty wanted perfection in every frame. When casting the female lead, he immediately thought of Diane Keaton, the woman he'd admired since Annie Hall. He told the Los Angeles Times Diane has an inner strength that draws you in. "She's a mystery I wanted to solve." Keaton accepted, unaware that the film would consume 2 years and lead her into one of her most complicated relationships. The crew moved between London, Helsinki, and Los Angeles. Beatty directed, starred, and rewrote scripts nightly. Keaton, playing journalist Louise Bryant, became the film's heart. They worked from dawn till midnight, arguing, laughing, and falling silent again. Los Angeles Times critic Sheila Benson wrote in 1981 that Beatty was always near Diane, even in meetings that didn't involve her. A crew member recalled, "At the Dorchester Hotel, his room light stayed on until morning. Diane walked out holding a revised script they'd talked all night." Their relationship became a mix of romance and tension. On set, Beatty controlled everything: lighting, camera angles, facial expressions, while Keaton, who cherished freedom, grew exhausted. She confided, "Being around Warren feels like living inside a storm." When Reds finally released in 1981, it was hailed as a masterpiece. It won 3 Oscars, including Best Director for Beatty. People magazine crowned them Hollywood's new golden couple. Vanity Fair wrote on screen they were the love of the century. Off-screen, a collision of egos. Yet, behind the triumph, Keaton realized Beatty wasn't the ideal man she'd imagined. Throughout the 60s-80s, he had a long storied romantic history: Julie Christie, Natalie Wood, Goldie Hawn, Carly Simon, Diane Sawyer, Mary Tyler Moore, and later Madonna. In Peter Biskin's biography, Star How Warren Beatty Seduced America, he estimated Beatty dated over 12,000 women. Beatty himself laughed, saying, "That might be exaggerated, but I won't argue." To Keaton, he was mesmerizing, intelligent, magnetic, but contradictory. She told Oprah Winfrey, "He's the most fascinating man I've ever known. But living with him, I'd go mad." After Reds, Beatty became even more enamored with her. In 1982, during a film tour in San Francisco, he proposed offering a sapphire ring, saying he was ready to settle down. But the fairy tale ended quietly. Keaton declined. A close friend told Vanity Fair, "She knew Warren never belonged to anyone. He needed the crowd. She needed calm." Soon, Beatty moved on. By 1987, he was linked with Madonna during Dick Tracy. The press called them Hollywood's strangest couple. Madonna herself said, "Warren's the only man who ever made me wait." A year later, they split. Then, in 1992, Hollywood was stunned when Beatty suddenly married actress Annette Bening, his Bugsy co-star, and had 4 children. When reporters asked Keaton about it, she smiled. "I'm happy for him." Warren finally found someone patient enough. From then on, Keaton never publicly dated again. When Oprah asked if she regretted turning him down, Diane said he wanted me to be his other half. "I just wanted to be myself." That love, though unfinished, left a lasting mark. A close friend shared that in Keaton's Brentwood study hung a black and white photo from the Red set, she and Beatty watching playback together, eyes shining. She kept that photo for decades, the friend said. Not out of regret, but as a reminder that even when she said no, she was brave enough to love. Perhaps Beatty never understood that Diane truly loved him, only differently. She loved with reason, he loved with instinct, and that distance could never be closed. After years of strained friendships and unfulfilled love, Diane Keaton entered a new stage of life. But this time, the conflict no longer came from romance. It came from art itself, and from the greatest director she ever worked with, the one who had once lifted her to the very top of fame. 6. Alec Baldwin. Defending Alan and becoming the wrong symbol in Keaton's eyes. In early 2018, as Hollywood burned with the Me Too movement, Diane Keaton, long withdrawn from the public, was suddenly pulled back into the storm. This time she said nothing. Someone else spoke for her. That person was Alec Baldwin. In January 2018, Baldwin appeared on ABC's Good Morning America to promote his film Blind. When asked about the accusations surrounding his longtime friend Woody Allen, Baldwin replied firmly, "I don't believe the accusations. I believe Woody." That seemingly harmless remark immediately ignited outrage. Within hours, the phrase "I believe Woody" became one of the most controversial hashtags on social media. Variety ran the headline, "Alec Baldwin divides Hollywood." The Guardian wrote a statement that cracked the Me Too movement. Ironically, Baldwin's words almost exactly echoed what Diane Keaton had said 4 years earlier when she publicly defended Woody Allen at the 2014 Golden Globes. Now, as he repeated them, people dragged Keaton back into the debate. To the public, they became the defenders of Woody Allen, though neither had intended it. For Keaton, however, the issue wasn't who Baldwin supported. It was how he spoke over her, as if he alone understood Allen's loneliness. At 60, Baldwin was no stranger to media crises. Throughout his career, he'd been both praised as a brilliant actor and criticized as a magnet for trouble. A 2-time Emmy winner for 30 Rock and widely acclaimed for his portrayal of Donald Trump on Saturday Night Live, Baldwin was known for his sharp wit, but off-screen he struggled to control his temper. From his 2013 altercation with paparazzi in Manhattan, where he snatched a camera and shouted in the street, to his infamous Twitter outbursts, Baldwin earned the label Hollywood's most hot-headed star. On Late Night with David Letterman, he once joked, "I'm the only man who can ruin myself in 280 characters." Just days after defending Woody Allen, social media erupted. Young stars like Greta Gerwig, Timothée Chalamet, and Rebecca Hall, who had all worked with Allen, announced they regretted working with him and would donate their pay to anti-abuse organizations. Baldwin, however, refused to back down. He tweeted, "Sometimes the crowd doesn't seek truth. They just want someone to blame." That tweet only fueled more anger. Thousands flooded his mentions calling for boycotts. The Hollywood Reporter wrote Baldwin has turned himself into Hollywood's loneliest man. Through it all, Diane Keaton remained silent. She made no statements, no public comments. Yet, according to a Variety source at a small gathering in Los Angeles, Keaton quietly told friends, "He doesn't understand the price I paid for saying that." Now he repeats it just to make himself look good. Her words weren't bitter, just disappointed. To her, Baldwin embodied a type of Hollywood man who believed he was protecting women while still trying to control every conversation. The media didn't spare him either. The Atlantic published a long analysis, calling Baldwin a reactionary artist who believes he's right until the internet proves otherwise. CNN quipped, "If Hollywood were a dinner party, Alec Baldwin would be the guest who wants both to tell the story and hold the microphone." Before the uproar could settle, Baldwin faced the biggest crisis of his life. In 2021, during the filming of Rust in New Mexico, a tragic incident occurred shocking the world. Instantly, U.S. media dug up his past, his temper arguments and public remarks painting him as a self-destructive star. Meanwhile, Diane Keaton continued her quiet life, calm, detached from social media, occasionally posting black and white photos on Instagram. She never mentioned Baldwin again. But in a notebook found after her passing, one line in her signature, slanted handwriting read, "He's not bad. He just doesn't know when to stay silent." That short sentence was haunting. It wasn't only about Baldwin, it was about a generation of Hollywood men used to speaking louder, forgetting that sometimes silence is the truest sign of strength. Through all of this, Diane Keaton retained one thing, her dignity. Yet her greatest test in later years came not from the men of her generation, but from a younger voice, a director of modern Hollywood, who once declared Diane Keaton stood on the wrong side of history. 7. Jud Apatow. When the new generation judges the old icons. In early 2018, Hollywood was undergoing its most turbulent transformation since the Golden Age. Once revered figures suddenly became symbols of the past. An industry built on silence was now forced to speak. Amid the chaos, Diane Keaton, once the epitome of intellect and loyalty, was dragged into a debate she never wanted. For simply expressing faith in an old friend, her name flooded every forum. And what set the fire ablaze wasn't the public, but a younger filmmaker, Jud Apatow. Apatow, by then one of Hollywood's leading writer-directors, represented a new generation, open, outspoken, and socially conscious. His films, such as The 40-Year-Old Virgin, Knocked Up, and Trainwreck, had made him the face of modern American comedy. On talk shows, he often discussed social issues, becoming a voice for the younger audience. Yet it was Apatow who openly criticized Diane Keaton after her controversial remarks about Woody Allen. To him, the idea that a feminist icon would defend a disputed figure was unacceptable. On social media, he condemned it as an example of outdated thinking Hollywood must move on from. His words split the artistic community in two. Some praised him for saying what others wouldn't. Others condemned him for publicly shaming a 70-year-old actress who had paved the way for countless women in the industry. Soon, Apatow's own past came under scrutiny. Throughout his career, critics had accused him of male-centered storytelling. In 2007, the New York Times critic Manohla Dargis wrote that Knocked Up was a story of men learning to grow up while women exist, only to facilitate that growth. By Funny People, 2009. The Guardian again noted how Apatow's female characters served merely as reflections for male self-discovery. The irony was sharp. The man once criticized for portraying women one-dimensionally was now judging one of the most complex, powerful women in Hollywood. Those close to Diane Keaton said she wasn't angry, just saddened. She felt like an outsider in the world she had helped shape. Instead of responding, she withdrew. Keaton left social media, canceled interviews, and avoided the spotlight. A close friend revealed that during February that year, she stayed mostly in her Brentwood home, reading, taking photos with her old film camera, and writing thoughts no one would read. Among her later notes, one line stood out: "I used to think art was where people said what they believed. Now I see the world only wants to hear what makes it comfortable." Public opinion gradually shifted. Many critics realized that the clash between Keaton and Apatow was no longer about two individuals, but a reflection of Hollywood's generational divide. One side grew up when loyalty and privacy were sacred. The other lived in a digital age where even silence could be condemned. On The View, Whoopi Goldberg summed it up perfectly. Diane Keaton doesn't need anyone to teach her how to be a woman. She helped define what that means. Afterward, the storm faded. Apatow stopped commenting and Keaton kept her silence. But the event marked a turning point. It showed that Hollywood no longer allowed ambiguity. Every word, every belief was now examined under the microscope of the times. 3 years later, Apatow returned with The King of Staten Island, a gentler, more introspective film. Many saw it as his way of reflecting on himself. Diane Keaton, meanwhile, almost completely withdrew from the media. After 2019, she appeared only at a few photography exhibitions and memorials for old colleagues. In her final journals, one line referred to that time: "The world changed too fast. Maybe I slowed down, but at least I never forgot who I was." The clash between Jud Apatow and Diane Keaton had no winner. It was a mirror reflecting two Hollywoods, one that honors its past and one that believes only in the present. And Diane Keaton, though misunderstood and judged, kept the one thing that truly mattered: the dignity of silence. That journal closed with one final messy but haunting line: "I don't hate them. I just hate the way they made me forget how strong I once was." Perhaps that was Diane Keaton's last message to the world, a world she once loved, fought for, and was hurt by. So, after hearing this story, who do you think Diane Keaton truly resented the most? Leave your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories behind Hollywood's shining lights.